Hey everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, a GeneaVlogger, and welcome to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On this video, I will be reacting to 10 shocking results from DNA Ancestry Tests from the YouTube channel TopTenz. So I'm really interested to see what shocking results they talk about, if maybe there's things that I already know. I'm really hoping that they stay away from a lot of the fear-mongering stuff, or have at least done the research. I feel like I've seen TopTenz videos, but I don't really remember, so I'm not sure if they're one of those channels that kind of just puts out whatever they find, or if they research into it. So let's get going and see.
Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching TopTenz Net, and in the video today, the top 10 shocking results from DNA Ancestry Tests. Ancestry tests provided by companies like 23andMe, Ancestry.com and Helix are more popular than they've ever been. As more people have their DNA tested to see where in the world their ancestors came from, it's led to some fascinating results. In some cases, the results are downright shocking and can uncover secrets that have been buried for years, if not decades.
If not centuries.
Number 10, Doreen Isherwood and Anne Hall. In 2007, two white English women, 64-year-old Doreen Isherwood from Putney and 53-year-old Anne Hall from Huddersfield, each purchased a DNA ancestry test. They expected that their ancestors would be English and from other parts of Europe. Much to their shock, they found something very unusual in their DNA makeup. They had DNA signature characteristics of Native Americans. Finding that signature in a white European person is incredibly rare. There are two explanations as to why the women have Native American ancestors. The first is that Native Americans were brought over to Britain from North America as early as the 16th century as curiosities. The second is that Native Americans also started to visit England seeking trade and protection in the 1700s. It's thought that some Native Americans who were either forced to come or visiting on their own accord married into the local communities, which is how they became these two modern-day white women's ancestors. Number 9, David Jantzik. David Jantzik was adopted as a baby by a family that lived in Pointe Claire, Quebec. Jantzik always thought of his adopted family as his real family. They were German and French, so he considered himself to be German and French as well. After his adopted mother died, his adopted father said he could look for his biological family if he wanted to, but Jantzik chose not to. Then, in 2017, Jantzik's wife suggested that they do a DNA ancestry test. Jantzik thought it would be fun to learn about his real heritage. When his results came back, he logged onto the website and noticed that there was a thumbnail indicating he had a close relative in the database. The relationship indicated the close relative was his biological mother. After thinking about it for a few minutes, he decided to message his mother, Catherine Murrell Sandness. Murrell Sandness lived in Halifax and received the message as she was getting ready for bed. She had signed up with the Ancestry database in the hopes of finding the son that she had put up for adoption 50 years earlier. They sent messages to each other, and Jantzik learned that he had an older brother, Bob. Jantzik met his biological family within a week of discovering them and asked his mother why he had given him up for adoption.
That's the real power in the DNA tests, is finding your genetic matches, especially for people who are adopted or, just for whatever reason have an unknown parentage. It's amazing to be able to take this DNA test and then all of a sudden you get close matches, or you're matching your parents or your siblings, or even just matching cousins, or of second or third cousins. That can really reveal a lot of different information. So it's quite amazing, that's for sure, and that's the real power of it. Although unfortunately, and I talk about this in a lot of the different videos, is that most people pay attention to the admixtures, partially because people kind of just want a quick, sweet, this is where you're from, they don't want to have to do the work, which I understand. But also it's got to do with a lot. That's how a lot of these DNA companies market it. They market that admixtures, like that's the main thing, which I understand. It's because that's the easiest thing to understand for the consumer public. So, yeah. But, let's see. What's number 8?
Murrell Sandness explained that she had had her first son when she was 15.
Or the rest
she had
of
Jantzik
number 9.
2 years later, and she knew she couldn't properly care for him. She wanted him to have a better life than she could provide. Jantzik said that after finding his mother, he feels complete and has no more questions about his background. Number 8, Craig Cobb.
Oh, I know that
Craig
this
Cobb
is the
a
racist
walking
guy.
and talking pile of trash who identifies himself as a white nationalist. He promotes hate speech and hate crimes, and he started an all-white community in North Dakota.
Then he took a DNA test,
Cobb
and it
appeared
turned
on the
out he was a little bit
show,
mixed
and
more than he
DNA
thought.
test for his ancestry. It turns out that Cobb was 86% European and 14% Sub-Saharan African. Cobb tried to dismiss the results by saying that 14% was statistical noise and short science.
Yeah, 14% is a little too high to be statistical noise.
Or DNA testing, so perhaps the DNA test is more accurate than he might be claiming. In 2015, Cobb had his DNA retested, and it turned out that his DNA was made up of 100% garbage. No, he didn't really say that. Instead, without showing any evidence to back it up, he claims he was not 14% Sub-Saharan African, but instead he was 97% European, and the last 3% was an Iberian thing. Number 7, Dick Nelson. Growing up in Rockford, Illinois, Dick Nelson always felt different from the rest of his family. His father, Albert, was 100% Swedish, while his mother's roots were in Western Europe. Dick had 4 sisters, 1 older, 3 younger, and all 4 sisters had blonde hair, blue eyes, and dropped out of high school. Dick, on the other hand, had brown eyes, black hair, and became a college professor. His father, who Dick calls the town drunk, died in 1952, and his mother died in 2001. In 2016, Dick, who was 78 years old, bought a $99 DNA test from Ancestry.com. It turned out that he was only 5% Scandinavian. That meant Albert, who was 100% Swedish, wasn't Dick's father. Dick then called his cousin and told her the news. That's when she told him that his real father was an Italian man named Jim Cassiope, who had dated one of Albert's sisters. Cassiope was a deputy sheriff, and he said...
In a lot of these family stories, and even in some of the families that I've helped in my own research, there's a lot of times somebody living who actually knows the truth. And it's funny how secrets can be held for so long, and sometimes people who even weren't the people that were like, we have to keep it a secret. They just kept it a secret because that was the thing, and then no one ever asked, so they just don't think about it. It's kind of interesting how often that happens in different families. So funny to see that, somebody in the family knew the truth.
Served as a Democratic committeeman. Also, just like Dick, he was an excellent dancer. Cassiope passed away in 1987. Number 6, Krista Brian. In the winter of 2016, Krista Brian was 37 years old and decided to investigate her ancestry. She sent a swab to Ancestry.com, and weeks later, her results came back, and they forever changed her life. Brian thought that she was Hispanic and that her father had died by suicide when she was just a baby. It turns out that she was African American, and her father wasn't the man she thought he was. Her father was really a man named Andrew Baker, who was alive and well in Florida. She eventually got in contact with Baker, and he said that he knew her mother briefly. He had no idea that he was her father. After confirming that he really was her father, Brian flew to Florida to meet her father and 4 half-siblings. Brian said she learned about her family just before Christmas and said it was the best gift she had ever gotten. Number 5, DNA regrets. In January 2018, the advice column Ask Amy published a letter from a very confused woman. She said that she had her DNA tested and discovered that she didn't share any DNA with the man she thought was her father. The writer said that she knew her mum had an affair in the 1950s, but thought it happened after she was born. She said that her family was friends with another family, and the patriarch of that family was the man her mother had an affair with. The writer said she went to school with the man's children, having no idea they were her half-siblings. The writer said she even considered the
Sorry, I'm kind of paying attention to the story, but I'm also just paying attention to the fact the article has such buzz line. It's also the second most visited category of website after pornography. Just it's just so, I don't know, so much. So it's kind of hard to pay attention sometimes. Home DNA test yields heartbreaking results. Oh, it's so heartbreaking. I mean, not to make fun of these people, but the headlines and stuff. I mean, I am a YouTuber. I've got to use my hooks too. But it's just funny seeing sometimes.
The patriarch of that family was the man her mother had an affair with. The writer said she went to school with the man's children, having no idea they were her half-siblings. The writer said she even considered the notion that her father was a different man than the man who raised her. She also wrote that her mother, who was 97, may not have known the man was her father either. Number 4, Andrea Ramirez. Andrea Ramirez grew up in the Bay Area of California, and she always thought she was part Mexican because her father was. Ramirez and her brother couldn't figure out why they had light hair and skin and didn't look anything like their father's children from his last marriage. They just always assumed they took on more from their mother's side. Then, in 2013, her brother had a DNA test and thought the results were odd, so Ramirez picked up a $199 test for herself and also had herself tested. She got several surprises. She not only learned that her father wasn't who she thought he was, but she had at least one half-sister as well. It turns out that Ramirez's mother had conceived her and her brother through donated sperm at a fertility clinic. Her half-sister's mother went to the same fertility clinic. Number 3, George Doe.
No.
In 2014, a man who used the pseudonym George Doe relayed a tragic story about what happened when he had his parents' DNA tested by 23andMe. George Doe had a PhD in cell and molecular biology, and he was fascinated by the results of his DNA tests.
I remember,
He decided to use
I remember reading this story, and it was like really long, but if I remember correctly, there were some parts of it that seemed a little bit off. I might be thinking of a different story, but if this is the story I'm thinking of, there were parts of it that seemed a little off, as if like, whoever wrote it, which they were anonymous, they were kind of either stretching the truth or they were, actually just straight up lying, making it up. But I don't know. See if it is.
Close relative finder and discovered that a man named Thomas shared 22% of the same DNA with him. Thomas thought this was an amazing amount of DNA to share with someone. He soon figured out that if you share around 25% of the same DNA with someone, there's a very good chance that they are your grandparent, aunt, or uncle, or a half-sibling. It turns out that Thomas was George's half-brother. George had no idea that Thomas existed. George got in contact with Thomas and learned he had been adopted at birth. He had also been looking for his biological parents for years. Eventually, the news of Thomas's existence spread around George's family. Sadly, the news reopened old wounds and memories. His parents got divorced, and everyone stopped talking to his father. Number 2, Walter Macfarlane and Alan Robinson.
Maybe that wasn't the same story that I remember. I don't know, but one thing I will say that is unfortunate with, a lot of these DNA test stuff is that, privacy is a real concern that people need to take in mind when they do anything. When you go on to Facebook, when you sign up for, any sort of giveaway or any, when you're giving any sort of information about yourself, it's good to consider privacy. But what happens is you get some people that will take it to a place where they start, basically, they're relying on people's fear of, privacy being infringed upon, or something really bad going on. And so you get a lot of these fear mongering stories when it comes to DNA test results. So it's kind of hard to deal with sometimes because there's misinformation out there, and especially when news stories will pick up stuff about DNA and report on it. A lot of times they'll get things wrong, and even if they, go back and correct it, once it's out the first time, fairly few people are going to see that later correction. So it's just one unfortunate side, which is one reason why going to videos like this, it's kind of worrisome, where it's like, oh gosh, what are we in for? So, but let's see the last two.
74-year-old Walter Macfarlane and 72-year-old Alan
let's
Robinson.
Go back a little bit.
Everyone stopped talking to his father. Number 2, Walter Macfarlane and Alan Robinson. 74-year-old Walter Macfarlane and 72-year-old Alan Robinson.
Oh, were these the guys who were two friends?
To experience in their lifetime. They were both born in Hawaii, and they met in 6th grade and played football together.
They were
in
friends
high
their
school
whole
and
life.
college. As adults, they stayed close. They both got married and had children, and their families became friends. The two families would even go on vacations with each other, and their kids referred to the parents of each family as aunt and uncle.
And that's such a cool
raised by his
story.
grandmother, and in 2017, he was looking for information on his long-lost father. He bought an Ancestry DNA kit and made a shocking discovery.
They do kind of look alike too. You can see it.
The only thing he knew about his half-brother was that his name was Robbie737. Macfarlane's wife realized that it might be his lifelong friend, Alan Robinson. Robinson's nickname was Robbie, and he used to fly 737s. Well, it turns out his wife was correct. Robbie737 was Robinson. Robinson had been given up for adoption at birth. He was adopted by a family who lived down the road from Macfarlane and his grandmother. They announced they were brothers at a family dinner on December the 23rd, and both families were overjoyed by the news.
And with Hawaiian ancestry too, Hawaiian ancestry and Pacific Islanders, they can have really, really endogamous results. like way worse than, you know, Jewish endogamy and French Canadian endogamy and like a lot of other types of endogamy. Just because if you think about it, you know, stuck on an island, not necessarily stuck, but living on islands for hundreds of years, and there's only so many people on the island, you're going to get a lot of people marrying relatives and cousins or in-laws, or, you know, all sorts of stuff. So after, you know, a bunch of generations, everyone's really related. So I'd be kind of interested to see their actual admixtures.
News. Number 1, Alice Collins Plebuch. In 2012, 69-year-old Alice Collins Plebuch, who lived in Vancouver, Washington, decided to do a DNA ancestry test. She always thought she was Irish Catholic. Her father, Jim Collins, was the son of an Irish immigrant, and her mother's family were also from Ireland.
She looks familiar.
Her father identified with his Irish heritage so much that they sung Danny Boy at his funeral. When Plebuch got the results back, she was shocked to learn that she was half Ashkenazi Jewish. She couldn't understand why and had her DNA tested again. It came back with the same results. She then had some of her siblings get their DNA tested, and it also said that they were Jewish. One possibility was that Plebuch's mother had an affair with a Jewish man. However, that didn't seem likely, so Plebuch had her cousin's DNA tested and discovered that they didn't have any Jewish heritage. Plebuch concluded that her father was, for some reason, not related to his parents. Then, on January the 18th, 2015, Plebuch was talking to her cousin, and it all came together. Her cousin had his DNA tested and found a close relative match named Jessica Benson, who lived in North Carolina. Benson was confused because she thought she was Jewish, but her ancestor results said that she was half Irish. Plebuch got into contact with Benson and learned that her father was born in the same hospital around the same time as her father. It turns out their fathers were switched at birth. The Irish Catholic family took home the Jewish baby, and the Jewish family took home the Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
After the revelation, the two families became friends and took a cruise together in 2017. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. And do not forget to subscribe. We've got brand new videos just like this every...
Yes, definitely hit that thumbs up button down below if you're enjoying. Yeah, that was a pretty cool video. I don't know if it would be the top 10 most shocking results. This video is from about 2 years ago. So, you know, maybe some of the things I'm thinking of since then or you know, have happened since then. But yeah, I mean, I've heard a few stories about, you know, the being switched at birth. You know, a lot of the typical stories in this top 10 of, you know, people finding out that, you know, their father wasn't their father and then somebody else was their father. But yeah, I'm really happy that they didn't jump into the whole fear mongering thing and, you know, made it, you know, oh, these 10 shocking results that destroyed families forever, you know. I mean, but with that said, one thing that anyone who takes these DNA tests needs to know is that, you know, these DNA tests are not going to, you know, they're not going to give you results based on your feelings. They're just going to give you, you know, the facts. They're going to tell you the interpretation of everything. And, you know, when it comes to the admixtures, these tests aren't necessarily lying. They're not, you know, you have to take them with a grain of salt because the admixtures are an estimation, a hypothesis based in scientific fact. But when you're looking at your genetic matches, there's no lying about that. You know, if you think someone's your father and you do a DNA test and they do a DNA test and you're not matching, they're just not your father. So, you know, if you do a DNA test, be ready for any sort of results. And if you don't have the capacity to handle that, then you may want to hold off or, you know, research a bit more into it, learn a little bit more. But, you know, if there are family skeletons hiding in the closet, a DNA test may open a few doors. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you enjoyed, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. That really helps me out. You can also click right about here if you'd like to subscribe. It's completely free to do so. And you can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at GeneaVlogger. I'm the GeneaVlogger. I will see you in my next video.